Hi folks, welcome to Two Lucky Spoons, your resource for modern fresh family meals. My name is Blaine and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things, biscuits. Biscuits brought my wife and I together. That's when I decided to get married. She made me biscuits one morning. But we're going to talk today about Biscuits 101. A little technique. We're going to talk about what's in a biscuit, the dry ingredients, the flour, the baking powder, salt, sugar, baking soda. We're going to talk about the fat you use, whether it's butter or shortening or something else. And we're going to talk about the wet ingredients, milk, buttermilk, half and half, cream, whatever you like. Alright, okay, let's get started. Alright, so we begin with dry ingredients. We've got flour. I like to use all-purpose. You can use self-rising flour if you choose. You'll leave out the baking powder and the baking soda, although I would add a little extra baking powder because that's really what makes your biscuits rise, and when you make biscuits you're going for height. So we got your all-purpose flour. We're going to add to that baking powder, and I use quite a bit of baking powder, about a tablespoon for every 2 cups of flour. Okay? Again, that's going to help to make it rise, and that's important. Next we've got salt. I like a little extra salt too, about a teaspoon and a half, per 2 cups of flour. And then some people put sugar in theirs. I don't use sugar in my biscuits. If I want something sweet, I'll put some jelly or jam or honey or sorghum molasses on there, any sort of things like that. And then we've got baking soda. Some recipes don't call for this, but I believe that it helps to make the biscuits rise a little bit too. So baking soda goes in. That's our dry ingredients. We're going to give that a stir. The thing about biscuits is you got all this stuff in your pantry, right? There's nothing that you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have this. I've got to go out and get it specifically to make biscuits with. Not true. Next, we're going to talk about the fat you use. Okay, we're going to talk about the fat you use in biscuits. We've got our dry ingredients together. The next step is the fat you choose. Some people like to use shortening. It makes for a fluffier biscuit, I think, in my opinion. A little softer. Some people like to use coconut oil because they have a specific diet. I hear that tastes great, almost like butter. Never tried it, don't know. Some folks, purists, insist on using lard. I like to use butter. Butter is my favorite because it has a lot of flavor to it. And, well, that's what you're really looking for in a biscuit, is a lot of flavor. Okay, well, we've got a couple sticks of butter here that I have frozen in the freezer for several minutes. Now, a lot of people will use shortening or a softer butter and they'll put it in their flour, and they will use a, what do you call those things? When you're breaking up your...
Pastry cutter.
A pastry cutter, thank you. They'll use a pastry cutter to cut their butter up with. I like to use this grater. My wife said, you know, when you make a pie crust, what you do is you freeze the butter and then you grate it. And I thought, oh, that's a terrific idea. So that's what I do with my butter now. Alright, butter goes in the flour. Now it's time to get your hands dirty. You want to coat the butter with the flour. Just get in there and make a mess. This is fun to do with your kids. They like this part. And get them involved. So there you go. The butter is already grated and small. You don't have to use a pastry cutter to get it into pea-sized little pieces because it's there already. And now it's all coated with flour. And we're good to go. Set that to the side. Okay, now it's time to talk about the third step, and that is your wet ingredients. Be it milk, butter, half and half, heavy cream. Some people use sour cream. I like buttermilk. Buttermilk gives it a little tangier flavor and makes for a little softer biscuit in my opinion. But you can use milk if you like, if that's all you've got. This recipe is really not so much about the recipe. There's some flexibility there. You can do different things to biscuits. People have been making biscuits a lot of different ways for a long time. But it's also about the technique. We're going to get to that in just a second. So we're going to take our buttermilk and incorporate that into, there you go, into the flour. And I've had my buttermilk in the freezer for just a little bit. Just like the butter, you want to keep your buttermilk and your butter nice and cold, because that is going to make your biscuits rise even more. You'll see. So we're going to mix this up just till it comes together. It's going to be pretty loose. You may have to add just a little bit more buttermilk to bring it there. But you don't want to overhandle it. So you certainly don't want to use any kind of electric mixer or any kind of beaters on there. I think I'll need just a little bit more. Oh no, here it comes. There it goes. All right, nice and loose. Next step is to flour your board. And here's where it gets fun. Here's where it gets to be a good time. I feel like Bob Ross right now. Here's some happy little flour. All right. Now here we go. Okay. So it's important to flour up your hands, keep those from sticking, and then you're just going to kind of work this dough out. You want it about an inch thick into a rectangle shape if you can get it. That's great. Some people might try to use a rolling pin. I don't like to do that. It's just one more thing to get dirty, and the tendency is to overdo it and your biscuits get tough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this up. What I'm building is layers in there, right? So I'm going to pat this back out. This is what makes it nice and flaky. Again, you want to come back down to about an inch or so. A little more flour on your hands if things start to get sticky. It's fine. So we roll it once. We're going to go twice. More flour as you go. Just making those layers in there, right? So every time you fold it over, that's going to be another layer in your biscuit. Come back third time. Don't worry if it sticks. It's going to be fine. A little more flour here and there, no big deal. All right. Then we have our folds. That's what's going to make it nice and flaky and help it to rise as well. And then you want to pat it out into about, a half inch or so. You could get technical and measure if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that here today. That looks about right. Now we're ready to cut. All right, time to cut the biscuits. Take your biscuit cutter and put it in some flour. And then you just want to push straight down. No twisting. Just want to get it there nice and cut. They say it crimps the edges and it won't rise if you start to twist. Now, if you don't have a biscuit cutter, you can use a glass, an old jelly jar, a cup laying around somewhere. It doesn't really matter. You can find something round that you can use, can't you? Now these scraps here, we're going to save those. And although they won't be as good as these cut biscuits, we're going to put those back together and make some biscuits out of them anyway. If you're, rich like the Rockefellers, you can just throw this stuff away. You'll still make perfectly fine biscuits. They just won't be quite as nice and shapely as the ones you use with the biscuit cutter on the first pass. Alright, next we tray them up. No need to put any aluminum foil. In fact, that'll be worse. These won't stick at all. You'll see, they'll be fine. Don't need to grease it. You can space them apart if you want to. I like to put them together. I think that helps them rise a little bit more. Maybe it's an old wives' tale, but I do it anyway. There we go. Okay, it's time to make the biscuits. Be sure your oven is at 450, nice and preheated, ready to go. And then we just pop them in for about 12 or 15 minutes. Easy peasy. Okay, we've waited. The time is now. Here come the biscuits. Look at that, would you? Oh my dang. That's it right there. Warm, flaky buttermilk biscuits. Well, there we have it. Southern Buttermilk Biscuits. So what do you got? You got dry ingredients. You got your flour, your salt, your baking powder, baking soda. Some people use sugar, I don't. You've got your fat. I go for butter and lots of it. And you've got your wet ingredients, which is buttermilk. To me, makes the best Southern biscuit around. So there you go. Hope you enjoy. Have a great day from 2 Lucky Spoons.